class. How are you? I hope you guys you're okay. I am fine as well. Um, since we last spoke about the case study Victoria Falls World Heritage Site, today we're going to proceed further to the effects of tourism on conservation, because we've discovered that upon all the things on cultural heritage sites or natural heritage sites, we've discovered that tourism poses the largest part of threats to heritage management on cultural heritage sites. So you'll discover that poorly sustained tourism actually destroy the site. The entire site can be destroyed by poorly sustained tourism measures. So we'll talk about those effects, and those effects we'll discover that tourism contributes to deterioration of sites, as well as it contributes positively and negatively. So we are going to discuss those effects on poorly sustained tourism on cultural heritage management and conservation. Okay. Tourism is one of the world's fastest growing industry, and is a major source of income for many countries. As we know, tourism is contributing more than 40% in terms of the income for many countries. Specifically in Zimbabwe, it contributes more than 48% of the income. So if these levels or the levels of numbers of tourists that are increasing on a yearly basis, they are not properly planned for and controlled, they may lead to total deterioration of the site. Being a people-oriented industry, tourism also provides many jobs which have revitalized local communities. We have seen in most areas, especially for our case, Victoria Falls, that place has become a place that has got a lot of job opportunities compared to the entire places in the country. So we have seen an influx of people from different parts of the country going to seek employment around the Victoria Falls. So the tourism industry there is booming, and it's actually contributing positively in terms of bringing income to the local communities. The World Tourism Organization stipulates that, like other forms of development, tourism has its own share of problems, such as social dislocation, loss of cultural heritage, economic dependence, and ecological degradation. So the World Tourism Organization have summarized the effect that comes with tourism with tourism instead, such as social dislocation, loss of cultural heritage, economic dependence, and ecological degradation. Learning about the impacts of tourism has led to many people to seek more responsible holidays, and these include various forms of alternative or sustainable tourism, such as nature-based tourism, ecotourism, township tourism, and cultural tourism. Due to growth of the touristic activity around the world, numerous studies being conducted to the study the negative and the positive consequences that activity generates in different destinations, regions, places, and countries where it develops. So the objectives of the government institutions, NGOs, international organizations, is to reduce the negative impact and to increase the positive aspects. So that's actually the main aim of the most government organizations, the non-governmental organizations. All they work on to deal with these negative effects and try to wipe them and try to improve more of the positive effects of tourism on cultural heritage sites and on conservation. Sustainable tourism is defined as tourism that respects both the local people and the traveler, cultural heritage, and the environment. It seeks to provide people with exciting and educational holiday that is also of benefit to the people of the host. So sustainable tourism, it advocates for meeting the needs of the visitor, or I may say of the tourist, and meeting the needs of the local people and the site on its own and its environment. So it means all these have to be balanced. This is what it advocates for. Even conservation, it advocates that the site's authenticity is maintained, whilst the visitor is also having his or her needs being met. So it has to be balanced. Sustainable tourism development requires the informed participation of all relevant stakeholders, as well as strong political leadership to ensure wide participation and consensus building. Achieving sustainable tourism is a continuous process, and it requires constant monitoring of impacts, introducing the necessary preventive and corrective measures whenever necessary. So this process, the process of implementing sustainable tourism is a continuous process. It's not a process whereby you say, I'm going to implement these measures. They will be responsible for the they'll be responsible for the conservation of the site for the entire period. So it actually changes, and as time goes on, these measures needs to be reviewed and implemented. So for example, if we look at the case of Victoria Falls, we are having quite an increase in terms of the visitors, in terms of the tourists coming into the site every year. So it means that the more the people continue to come to the more the tourists continue to come to the site, it means more measures or other preventive measures needs to be taken, because the more the people, the more the negative effects increase. On the other side, the more the income is generated within the site. So it means it needs actually strong political leaders to participate a lot in maintaining the site in terms of controlling the measures in the site. So I think that is clear on that point, whereby we're saying that as time goes on, there needs to be monitoring, there needs to be great monitoring in terms of the effects that are being met, or the effects that are developing as the tourism industry increase. So a process that continues again and again. So the government bodies as well as the local bodies has to sit most of the times and monitor the changes and see what implementation can be done to conserve the site. All forms of tourism management must be based in the principles of sustainable development that itself is based in 4 pillars, which are economic, environmental, social, and cultural. For this reason, the impact, positive and negative, above mentioned could be analyzed from 3 different points of view, which is economic, socio-cultural, and environmental. We'll discuss this as the research progresses. There is a growing need in communities to create well-developed and thoughtful tourism planning and development strategies. Tourism can impact a community negatively, and yet many people see only positive results from bringing visitors to their existing and potential destination. So this is what is happening in Zimbabwe. The government has relaxed. They're only concentrating on the positive effects that are brought by tourism. They only concentrate on the jobs that are being created by this booming industry. They only concentrate on the income that is brought by tourism. So, on the other hand, they do not realize the deterioration of the heritage. So, if the measures are not implemented, we will see the site will degrade to the extent that it will actually lose its entire value. So more and more attention has to be given to this site, so that always when we have an increase in a yearly basis, when we have an increase in visitorship, we also implement tourism conservation measures. So that needs to be taken into great consideration. Now, let's move to the economic, to the positive economic impacts. The first one is generating cash flow for the types of service, for all types of service. You'll discover that for any conservation measure to be taken, or any conservation measure to be implemented, the income is needed. There is cash that is needed. So we see that this tourism is generating income that helps to improve conservation and preservation strategies on the site. Secondly, they generation of income to the state and the municipality for taxes. That one is clear again. It brings cash, it brings income for the state and municipality for taxes. Generating of private investments in hotels and business, creation of employment and improvement of living standards of the inhabitants of the cultural site. For example, if you go to Victoria Falls, you'll find that especially most of the youth around that place, they are employed in the hotels, they're employed in the restaurants, they're employed in the parks, they're actually employed. Some of the tour guides, there are different organizations there that are responsible for the tours. So tourism is actually bringing employment on that area, and it has improved their standard of living. So we see tourism there playing a great role in the site. We see some of the crafts, they are making beadworking, they are craftsmen, they are doing quite different things that makes their living easier. So that's the importance of tourism on cultural heritage sites. So, for example, we have seen the building of the quite a number of restaurants and quite a number of lodges and hotels being built in that in Victoria Falls. So it actually contributes positively to the infrastructure and development. So it's very, very, very important that tourism is supported by all the government bodies, on the same sense, protecting the area so that the future generations will also have an advantage of having access to the site as it is. Public investments to create activities, events to attract tourists, and infrastructures to facilitate travelers as roads, airports, train stations, etc. So that one is also still under the improvement of the infrastructure that is also brought by tourism. Next is development of small towns, cities, and rural communities for the increasing of the tourism demand for the creation of activities and business by the inhabitants. As I've mentioned that we have seen the city growing, that especially the Victoria Falls township is actually growing tremendously due to the viable economy on the town. And we have seen most of the unemployment is being wiped there. You see the young men and young women selling craft products that they make. You see them becoming tour guides. They're quite having something to do around the field. So it's actually contributing positively there. Therefore, also the recovery of ancient crafts and traditions that could create interest for tourists, such as handicrafts, rituals, dance, etc. So those are the things that are happening on the sites. There are live performances there. If you go there, you'll see the live performances that are done by the local communities there. So those are the positive effects of tourism on Victoria Falls or on cultural heritage sites. Let's go to the negative impacts. Inflation of the local economy in basic services and products for the daily life. So it causes the inflation becomes high on the local economy in basic services and products for the daily life. I remember there was once in a year, it was 2008. That time, restaurants, the lodges there, they did not have menus, food menus with correct, I may say with instant, with the right prices because of inflation. Because it was happening that you will come at a certain period of time on a day, you find that maybe a cappuccino cup is about $40 in the morning. When you come again later, you try to buy the same cup, the same cappuccino cup, you'll find it at $80. So it was actually the prices were actually hiking because of the inflation that is brought by tourism there. And you will see that inflation is being high there because of the foreign currency that comes with the visitors, or I may say the tourists onto the place. So it's a negative effect that needs to be taken into consideration there. Secondly, we have the outflow of profit if the investment companies are foreign. That one is simple and straightforward there. Thirdly, we have a lower category jobs for the local people when the creation of business is of foreign investments that prefer international person to work within the. So if let's say the company that is operating there is a foreign company, maybe from America, they need maybe people with who are able to speak fluent English, or maybe the people who are able to speak French, or the people who are able to speak maybe a different language that is not common locally. It means that the company has to take people from outside, those people who are able to speak those languages. So it actually negatively impacts the local people, as they can't be employed in such a facility. So that's a challenge again unto that place. Increase of land prices creating difficulties to buy houses and to create small business for inhabitants of the city, causing depopulation and neglect of historic cities. That's the other challenge again. The increase of land prices creating, because I remember right now, if to buy a house around there in Victoria Falls, it's very, very, very expensive. It's very expensive. In most places that bring tourists around them, it's very, very expensive to buy houses there. And there is a lot of creation of small businesses and inhabitants of around the city, which then cause a lot of and unlawful in habitations, as we have more temporary shelters that develop on the city, thereby causing depopulation and neglection of the other historic cities. For example, we have quite a number of people coming from different places there in Victoria Falls, because the local people around there are actually the Tongas and those other tribes that we discussed earlier to lecture. So we now have quite a number of people speaking Shona there, and they are most of them, they become homeless there because it is difficult to buy a house there, it is difficult to rent a place there. So we are seeing quite a number of people having temporary structures for in terms of shelters, which then cause a threat to the land and cause quite a number of issues like pollution, and the site itself is being altered and is no longer authentic as it's supposed to be due to those temporary structures that are built there